My name is Alex Howard. For nearly 20 years, I've been a therapist here in London. I am deeply passionate about helping people make real, positive change in their lives. Having been through therapy myself at different stages of my own life, I know how transformative it can be. That's why I started In Therapy, a series that follows the stories of brave participants as they go on therapeutic journeys with me. Join us as we go behind the scenes as people grapple with issues like depression, anxiety, and chronic illness, and join my mission to break the stigma around mental health and asking for help. This is In Therapy with me, Alex Howard. Hi, Laura. How are you doing?
Really good. I sort of can you hear the sea in the background? Is it too loud?
Can I hear the sea in the background?
Yeah.
No, but I would like to hear the sea in the background.
I can show it to you. Would you like to see?
Yeah, I want to see. Show it to me. Oh my God.
That's my life.
Sorry, Oliver's come to have a look. Oh my God, it's unbelievable, that sunset. Oh, what? So there's quite a famous book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm going to title this episode How to Lose Friends and Alienate People.
Yeah, I think so. Although I've had a pretty tough journey to get here.
You have, it's true. How have you been? I've been wondering how you've been doing.
Yeah, wow, what can I say? There's been so much change internally and externally that I don't even know where to begin, really. I moved into this apartment yesterday.
Oh, wow, okay.
Sort of mad rush trying to get the Wi-Fi sorted. I'm surprised it's working, and I had to go invest in one of those mesh Wi-Fi things so that we could do this call. Yeah, life is really good. I actually can't believe this in my life. I keep having to pinch myself and be like, and I'm trying not to let those negative thoughts of what's going to go wrong come in, because it's like wanting to say like, oh, this is just too good. Come, there's got to be something that comes up, you know?
Last time we spoke, I think you'd been to the gym for the first time, and you just sort of started to land and were sort of settling. So yeah, just maybe run me through the external, what's been happening, like just sort of the events, and then let's come to how things have been sort of internally.
Sure. Well, big external difference is I had my surgery.
Already? Wow.
I had my surgery. Yes, I ended up. They decided they need to do the surgery very quickly, and I couldn't wait, so I had to do it over here with all the quarantine and stuff. I couldn't get back to the UK, but I think you guys knew that was happening anyway. And so yeah, that was a bit of a. I mean, I wouldn't even say it was traumatic, actually, because I'm so chilled these days. Obviously hard having surgery away from home.
Sure.
You've got no one to look after you, so I hired someone to look after me. And she's ended up becoming a really, really good friend. And her and her family have kind of taken me under their wing, which is lovely.
That's sweet.
So that's nice.
And how has your recovery from the surgery been?
Really quick, much faster than anybody expected.
Okay.
I have to keep reminding myself it's been 4 weeks today. Okay. And not 4 months. Yeah. Because obviously it's hard not to just go back into doing stuff, but I'm starting to feel different, which is good.
And when you say different, what do you mean by that?
Less brain fog, less tired, less, just clearer headed.
And in terms of the sort of cancer side of it, are they confident they've got what they need? And yeah.
Their biopsy results came back negative. They don't know what it was. The reason they thought it was cancer is because it crossed into the muscle wall, and apparently only cancer can do that. So the growths were not cancer. They have no idea. I'm like, story of my life. They're like, we don't really know. You've never seen this before, but we just need to get rid of it before it does turn into something.
Yeah. So you didn't have to worry so much about margins of error and all that sort of thing, but nonetheless, just sort of getting it out.
And they removed a lymph node as well.
They did. Okay.
Yeah. Because it was just the growth had gone into it so much. So yeah, there's obviously, I've got a little bit of like lymphedema or something. So fluid builds up and stuff. So I've got to look after that. But otherwise, I've got a complete clean bill of health.
Wow. And they took the implants as well?
They took all the implants out. It's not pretty, I'm not going to lie, but I don't care.
I was going to say, how does it feel physically and emotionally? That's quite a big transformation for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, my surgeon has recommended I need to do a bit of reconstruction. That wasn't their priority. Their priority was just to get rid of all the growths, get everything out, and then in a few months when I've healed, they can look to do neaten things up a little bit. And in a way, it's quite liberating. I feel very good that I'm natural.
Yeah. And quite honestly, a guy that is ultimately attracted to you because of the shape or the form of your breasts is not actually the guy you want to spend your life with.
No, exactly. And I can't wait to start doing a bit of exercise again. So
what's the timeline in terms of being able to do that?
About another 6 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I'm walking. I walk. I mean, you can't not walk every day.
With a view like that, who would not?
Yeah, exactly. So I do lots of long walk. Every day I do a long walk.
Yeah, it sounds like you've bounced back amazingly, but nonetheless, it's still a fairly significant surgery that you've had. How is your energy and the sort of fatigue side of things? Maybe it's hard to get a sense of what is the surgery and the recovery, but what's your sense of where you are?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a physical thing because I had so much inflammation and my body was obviously fighting a really big battle. So I was obviously rejecting the implants because of all the other health autoimmune problem I have. I don't think the implants caused it, but I think they were becoming a foreign object in my body, was causing a lot more of a reaction than it would for a normal person.
And it's loads, sorry to interrupt you because you're trying to answer my question, but it's also, it's loads on a boat, right? And it's not necessarily that the implants were the cause, but it is a load on your body. And there are enough instances of people that are having issues with implants, having them removed, having noticeable changes in their health and energy on the other side. So we are dealing with a valid consideration of a load on your system.
I never thought about it that way. I thought about it as this like black and white, it'll cure me or it won't cure me kind of mentality. But you're right. If we think back to the boatload, it was, I think, the one thing that was still holding me back because I've done so much and I was still just feeling like I was doing better, but I was just constantly not able to quite get the level up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I feel like this was that one thing that was really kind of still keeping my boat kind of sunk.
Yes.
It wasn't immediate. It was kind of at the third week, I think. So about a week ago, I fancied a glass of wine. Normally I can't tolerate it. And like, if I do have it, I pay a big price. I feel sick the next day. Had a glass of wine, had the best night's sleep I've had in ages. Woke up going, that wasn't supposed to happen. Like, what's gone wrong? So I tried it the next night. It was like, same thing. And I mean, I'm talking like one or two small glasses. Next day, I was like 2 days in a row, and I'm not like out of action for 3 days. Like something's helping my body.
Yeah.
I think that was, and then I used to have constant allergies to everything and tolerances. That seems to have died down a bit. I can vary my diet a little bit more now. I don't seem to have such bad digestive issues.
Digestive issues. Yeah.
Digestive issues. Yeah. I was really struggling to learn Spanish. So when I joined, I just had no memory when I joined, when I still can't talk. When I moved over,
I get it.
I just couldn't remember. It was like brain fog. I was finding the lessons painful. I just hated it. I took 1 week off after my surgery, and then the following week I had a lesson again. And even though I was tired, it was like something just clicked, like my memory started coming back. And that for me has been one of the most debilitating thing is fatigue and this brain fog memory thing, where you can talk, but nobody realizes inside the struggle
Yes.
that you're having. And when I was talking, I'd always feel like I was shouting, even though I was just talking, and it felt like effort. Now I'm like, so look, compared to a normal person, they're probably very tiny changes. But for me, it's a big leap.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
There clearly are changes in your physical health and your capacity. But I also want to point to something else as well, which is if you imagine going back, let's say, a year and having the implants out and the way that your idealized self was your identity in the world, to hear you say, basically, it's all good, I'm okay with it. Like, yeah, maybe I'll have some reconstruction at some point. Like, but the fact that it isn't this big psychological trauma for you, if anything, it's a liberation. That, I think, is an amazing testament to how far you've come on the inner journey you've been on.
Yeah, a year ago, no chance. I wouldn't even wouldn't have even been open to it. People would send me links and I'd be like, absolutely not. It's nothing. It's not that. I know for sure. Blah blah blah.
Well, you sort of had a pressure applied medically, right? But again, you might have.
Choice in the end.
But yeah, but you might have negated that or ignored that or fought back against that or have had the surgery but been effectively traumatized by the fact that you'd lost your identity and you'd lost this sort of idealized self that you were used to being. And that's why I say I think it's a testament to the inner work that you've done, that you not only have you physically bounced back so fast in terms of the surgery, but actually it's been a positive, not a negative, because actually you're no longer defining yourself in the ways that you were.
It's very, very, yeah, it's really true. And I think if this had happened a year ago, I probably would have just replaced the implants. Right. I might have changed them to a healthier thing because I now know that my implants were recalled anyway. But, you know, I wouldn't have actually had the guts to go that. And actually, now I look back, I don't even think I liked my boobs. They were big and they were fake. They didn't suit my body. They were great at the time, 10 years ago when those things, well, 6 years ago, but when those things, big boobs were fashionable 10 years ago. But it's not really like that anymore. And I'm older.
Well, I was going to ask you, where are the challenges at the moment? I mean, it's amazing to hear the progress and the change. And I'm always I always admire more and appreciate more the inner changes. And I think this is a great example of the inner changes have allowed the external changes to happen. Like, I think it's a really interesting dance between doing the inner work to then having a situation that kind of forced your hand a little bit, to then actually going through that in a much more effortless way because you'd already done the work to get to that point. But these things are never black and white. And of course, there must have been some really difficult times and days. And I'm curious as to where the challenges have been.
Challenges. Do you know, one of the big challenges at the moment is trying to remind myself to pace myself, because I'm like, oh, I've been on calls all day. When I got on this call, I was a bit like, oh, I really don't feel like doing this. I'm so tired. I've been talking all day, but I've still got more to give, which I'm amazed. And I have to really slow down, because it's old habits coming back already. I can feel this week at work.
Yeah. I think the challenge is your capacity has grown and expanded, but then it's like you don't actually know at the moment where the edges are. So you're going to have to crash into some edges to find where they are. But what we want to make sure is you don't slam them so hard that you then end up flopping back for a long period of time. Or what you don't want to have happen is that you start to overcommit your diary and your schedule because you think, well, I'm invincible now, so I'm going to say yes to this and yes to that. And then suddenly you're kind of a victim of what you've committed to, and then you crash and then you feel like you're trapped and you can't get out. So just going carefully at this point, I think is really important. And, erring on the side of caution, remembering there is a physical recovery process, an emotional recovery process. And also, you moved to Spain to enjoy your quality of life, not go back into the old. What you don't want to do is recreate the life you had in England in Spain, just with a nicer climate. But I think, this is the same issue that you were working on in England. And in some ways, there's been a sort of temporary pause because there was all the craziness of the move and then figuring out the surgery, having the surgery and the whole process of that. And if you remember, one of the things that we talked about previously was it's easier to say no when you physically just don't have the energy to do things. It's like and I think one can sometimes think they've worked the issue more than they have because they've got this solid excuse to keep saying no to things. But it's only when your energy comes back and you can do things that you really have to work out, actually, what do I want to be doing? But also what level of things do I commit to in a way that my life actually stays within balance? Otherwise, it's like you end up in a boom and bust, that you do sort of manage to do everything, but when you're not doing things, you sort of crash trying to recover to do it again, which is a dangerous path for you to go down.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why I am trying to be careful not to overcommit to too many things. Before I would have been like, yeah, I'll do it all. Now I'm like, let's see, come January, and let's see how I feel, and maybe I'll do one thing. And it is difficult because the problem is, like, it's what do I want to do? Well, I want to do it all.
Well, I'm going to challenge that. What you want is to feel joy and happiness and feel fulfilled in what you're doing. And doing it all at the sort of frenetic Lauren pace of past, where you're rushing from one thing to the other, means that you're not necessarily fully present in what you're doing. And you're so busy moving from one activity to work, to catching up, to loads of Zoom calls, to you're not actually feeling connected and fulfilled. So it's sort of finding that sweet spot where you are able, yes, you might be busy and enjoying what you're doing, but you're not crossing that threshold where you're suddenly going numb because you're just pushing yourself to keep up.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I think I'm in a little bit of overexcitement because I feel good, but I know this comes to waves because I've already had a couple of days where I was just couldn't, it was a really last Wednesday, just crashed, tired, back to the old thing. And I thought, oh God, here we go again. And then next day I was actually okay. So yeah, I'm not cured, but I'm just incredibly excited that I've got to this stage. I really, even though I knew I was feeling better all the time, every time we spoke, it was still there. That black fog was still there. And it's lifted a little bit for the first time. And it's just, I just can't, it's like, I could just almost cry right now out of joy that I've just had this little glimpse again of what it's like to be normal.
Yeah, and I think it's all the more precious when you've worked as hard as you have to get where you've got to, right? There's a sort of, and it's often hard to articulate to someone that's not been on the journey what it means to just be able to go for a swim in the sea and not worry about how you're going to feel afterwards, or to be able to have a couple of glasses of wine and not think, oh my God, I'm going to feel shit for 2 days afterwards. Just those sort of simple things in life that just become the most sort of magical, precious things. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, that you don't need to be busy 16 hours a day to feel bliss and joy and connection in your life. Actually doing less often is more satisfying.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not doing a lot. I don't have a lot of friends to do stuff with. I have a lot of acquaintances I could become friends. I could if I wanted to, but I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing to save my time for kind of special friends who actually want to spend time with, because I don't, like you said, have the energy to just do everything that I get invited to all the time. Lockdown also helps, but I guess I'm not much busy. I'm doing a lot, but if you really had to map out what I do on a week, I probably have 2 activities a week where I actually go out and do something with someone. And that's probably never going to change, because that's my routine, really. Do one thing on the weekend and do one thing on a Wednesday when it's my day off. And that's pretty.
But as your energy continues to increase, there will be a point where you don't have those limits. And that's the bit that I'm speaking to. That you still want to have parameters, and as we spoke about, I think it was sort of around the summertime, and I was saying that you sort of need to design your life in such a way that allows you to stay within your rhythm and your balance. And that's different for different people.
That for me it's work. It's not the socializing that's tempting me.
Okay.
As much as work is, because I've had my year of taking this kind of slightly less role that I'm qualified for, I suppose, skilled for. And now it's 2021, and now I'm at a point where they're like, okay, what are you going to do next year? Ooh, okay. So what are my options? And I'm kind of exploring that. And obviously there's like a little bit of me that is like, okay, where do I want my career to go now? What do I want to do? There's a role that's opened up. Do I, so there's like, and that's the stuff that I need to be really careful with, because I'm like, I'll take the whole role, I'll do everything, I'll manage everyone. I'll like take over the world, come on, let's do it. And then I have to remind myself that I could probably do that for a limited amount of time, and then I'll be back to square number one. But the temptation to just be someone again in my industry, that sounds really arrogant, but just to be an expert in something again.
But just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it. And I think whatever you decide in terms of the next steps in your career, I think what's really important is you do it in the much wider context of everything else in your life. And again, sort of going back to some themes that we've talked about previously, life is about compromises. And if you choose to go into a full-on career role that's going to be challenging in that way and all-consuming for the next few years, then you also have to recognize you're going to have less time when it comes to relationships, less capacity if you decide that you want to become a mum at some point, less time for hobbies and friends. Like, it's not that you can't necessarily do the career thing. You just need to make sure that whatever you choose it with a total 360 reflection of everything else, and you make those priorities consciously, not go, I really want the job and I'll figure it out and I'll make everything else happen. You need to be really considered about where you commit and what you put your energy into.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was a bit cocky about things when I was having these interviews last week. I was like, yeah, but the scope's not big enough. I want this, I want that. And I'm having another conversation tomorrow. And I think I'm going to be like, well, I think you're right. I'm probably not ready to take on everything just yet.
And, opportunities will keep coming along. It's not like if you don't take this opportunity, you won't get another opportunity. Yeah. And it might be there's a halfway house that you can sort of share the role, or you can do elements of it. But I would just be very careful at this point, as you're just starting to really feel your capacity coming back, to not just go, oh, great, I can go back to the old pattern, because that's something you've done before, where you've gone for a really difficult period, you started to get back on track, and then you've just gone straight back into the old pattern.
My life, yeah.
and you need to break that cycle.
Yeah.
Do you have any final questions for today?
No, I don't think so. I always like these sessions because they remind me of how far I've come as well, but also they kind of remind me how far I've still got to go in a positive way, that, and just the work I've done as well. Like, you get caught back up in life again, and then you forget all that work you've done, and you forget the work that you need to keep doing and stuff. So yeah, you're doing great, and there's still work to do. So let's say we'll get something in, we're just figuring out dates, but sort of mid-January, if that sounds okay, as a sort of next touch point, sort of 5 weeks time or so. In the meantime, keep going, and we'll have a great Christmas and New Year as well. And we'll talk in January. You too. I'm going to go do my Christmas tree this evening.
Sounds perfect.
Decorated. I still get stuck with my words. But...
Well, you enjoy, and lovely to hear how you're doing.
Thank you. See you soon.
Bye. Bye. Hope you found this week's episode helpful. For those of you that have been following Lauren's story over the last 12 months, I think it's so great to see her dealing with such a challenging situation in such a positive way. It's really a testimony to the work that she's been doing. We released a video Sunday before last, which was a bit of a recap of Lauren's story so far. So if you haven't been following her story to this point, do go and check out that video. All her previous episodes obviously are on my YouTube channel. Next week, we're going to be catching up with David. David's been going through a challenging time with lockdown, and a lot more of his emotions and anger has been coming up. So we're going to be going deeper into that. Here's a taste of what's coming up next week. So last time we were talking about anger, and I was sort of curious as to what came from that.
It's really a sort of impotent anger. It's an anger that, I don't know what to do with.
What I hear you doing is you're trying to look for a rational place to place your anger.
Yeah.
But I think it's more simple than that. I think the anger is that your dad died and you didn't want him to die.